How simple would it be if life and morality were as straightforward as saying the recipe for a bad person is a spoon of inherent evil, a cup of neglect, and a dash of bad influence? Alternatively, the recipe for a good person is found in the most iconic moral philosophy books: Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, Utilitarianism by John Stuart Mill, or The Metaphysics of Morals by Immanuel Kant. Have you ever sat down and really contemplated your own morality, or wondered, am I a bad person? How do I be a good person? I'm here to advise you that the way to be ethical is to learn how to be a bad person. We can all learn from history's most hated, or maybe just the people we hate in our lives, but ultimately we can learn a lesson from them. I used to be, and still am, obsessed with doing the right thing. Sometimes this obsession can get so fervent and narcissistic that I would jokingly say that I am the reincarnation of one of the most famous philosophers of all time, a person that lived and died alone and never traveled outside his city, Immanuel Kant. Kant was a German philosopher during the Enlightenment period. In relation to ethics, he believed that actions follow universal moral laws. He is most often associated with deontology. Deontology is an ethical theory that is duty-based and says that actions are either intrinsically good or bad. I'm not sure why, but this system just appealed to me. Perhaps in a chaotic and hedonistic world where we can never predict the problems of life, a set of absolute rules act as a source of comfort. I would like to tell you about a time when I thought I was doing the right thing, but ended up doing more harm than good. But first, you should know this about me. I hate lying. Even if it's a small, insignificant white lie, my stomach turns inside out and my lips mutter the words that eventually spill out of me. Once, at a family reunion, a woman with short hair and round glasses comes up to me, saying, "Do you remember me? I held you in my arms when you were just a little baby." In my mind, I was thinking, who's this really kind woman who thinks I remember anything from my infancy? So I said, "No, sorry, I don't remember you." Her look changed, and she asked my grandma to come over and says, "How does your granddaughter not remember me, your best friend in the entire world?" I ended up making two people become infuriated with my comment. I really should have just said, "Of course I remember you," just like the rest of the world does. So ignorance may really be bliss sometimes. But being infatuated with doing the right thing is clearly not how to be a good person. Well, at this moment, what I think is the way to be a good person is learning how to be a bad person. I want to know how to be a bad person in order to be a good person. It's true that we all see the meaning of good differently. By today's standards, Aristotle would be a terrible example, even though he's seen as such a prominent figure in ethics. If you watch The Good Place, I'm sure you know about the fact that they tell us Aristotle is in the bad place because he defended slavery. Well, he did more than that. He married the slave of his former wife and was a big perpetrator of inequality. There are probably countless more things that aren't on the record, but social psychologists, ethicists, and religious leaders say we see eye to eye on the big stuff. We believe it's good to be kind, fair, and just. It's bad to cheat, murder, and steal. WikiHow says that being a good person means more than just doing things for others. I agree with this. For me, an important thing is having the strength to not snap at everyone after having a day where you were shouted at, received bad news, and stubbed your toe. By understanding what a bad person would do in each scenario, it allows me to not only think twice before I act, but it also increases my self-awareness. Here's another reason why I think learning how to be a bad person would improve us. When I was about 14, I had dinner with my mom. Sat next to me were these two kids, one a bit older and one a bit younger than I was. For the entire dinner, the kids had their necks down, eyes glued to their phone. The parents tried in a very gentle tone to get them to eat and have a conversation with them. They didn't listen or make eye contact, but I was so in awe of the mother's patience, and her eyes had this hopelessness and distance that I just couldn't ignore. For the entire dinner, I think that seeing the kids do that, which is admittedly something I have done, made me so reflective of my own actions that I didn't dare touch my phone because I would be heartbroken if my mom had the same look on her face as the other mom did. Now, of course, the kids are bad people. They were just being kids in this modern day and age. But if they were more self-aware and saw themselves from another perspective, an outsider's perspective, I'm sure they would have done the same thing I did. To apply another common example, in Cantonese we have this phrase, deontology, which Wikipedia translates to smartphone zombie. It's more used in a larger setting, such as when you look up when you're on public transport, and everyone is just looking down on their phone. We are often a part of this group without even noticing. But when you finally take a moment to notice your surroundings, by looking at things from another perspective, you realize how horrifying the phenomenon is. More often than not, I have instead chosen to just listen to music, pretend I'm in a music video, and look at the view, or just read a book. I know it might sound a bit absurd, but by viewing yourself as you do with strangers, you gain more clarity to the goodness of your actions, and become more independent in your self-judgments. I want to encourage a sense of autonomy in decision-making that will develop our moral character instead of just blindly handing out solutions. Every time you're about to consciously make a decision in your day-to-day life, place yourself in an outsider's point of view. What would a bad person do in your situation, and how can you avoid this? Can you think of any real examples you can learn to avoid from? The reason I think this is better than copying what a good person would do, or learning a set of rules, is that it encourages us to think about the justice and motivations behind certain actions, or lack thereof. Learning what a bad person would do would ideally force us to think of what to do to correct and counter this, encouraging our own critical thinking. So, who wants to learn how to be a bad person? I do. I really do. I want to know how to think like the Dr. Octopus to Spider-Man, the Dr. Doofenshmirtz to Perry the Platypus, because by doing this, I'll always know what not to do. To me, what I choose to do in this world seems like the only thing I can control. I may never know whether or not the world is real, whether or not there is a higher being, whether or not I exist, whether or not there is no free will. It may all not matter in the end, but being a good person isn't just about craving moral dessert and expecting things in return. It's more than that. But I think this is especially important for a 17-year-old like myself. I know that everyone sees teenagers as the worst. We're in that rebellious stage in our life when our bodies and minds are developing. It is a stage of our life when we are particularly vulnerable and susceptible to making bad decisions. In an attempt to have this idealized version of our teenage years, a lot of us make bad decisions, thinking it's what encapsulates the perfect teenage experience. We will make mistakes as teenagers, and that's okay. But we have to consider how our decisions affect everyone, especially those who look after us. It's important to build moral character, and I believe learning what a bad person would do allows us to be more empathetic and intelligent during our decision-making process. Ethics reminds me of the things I take for granted by unveiling the morality in this world.